what's going on? This is Dr. Ben Glass. I'm a chiropractor, and here's another pre-chiro conversation for you with a professional chiropractor out in Boulder, Colorado, Dr. Ryan Marchman. Thank you so much, Dr. Ryan, for sharing with the prospective students tonight. Can we get started by you just sharing your background before you became a chiropractor? What were you up to and what attracted you to this profession?
Yeah, okay. That's most of my story. Before I was a chiropractor, I was a neuromuscular therapist. But I wasn't only a neuromuscular therapist. The story that led up to me being a chiropractor is pretty long. I don't know if you want to get into that right away, but it started when I was 5 years old. I had a near-death experience. I became very ill. I spent 7 days in the pediatric ICU. Nobody knew what was wrong with me, but they told my parents I was going to die. I survived, obviously, and during that near-death experience, I had a confrontation with life, so to speak. I woke up on the first day that I wasn't in the ICU anymore. I was in a regular hospital room. I got up. My parents were gone. I don't know where they were. They must have been in the cafeteria getting a coffee or something. And I wheeled my little IV cart out into the hallway. That was before you were hooked up to all sorts of machines, you know. So I wheeled my little cart out into the hallway, and I walked down to the end of the hallway, and there was a big plate glass window at the end of the hallway. And this was in Gainesville, Georgia. Georgia's very green. I looked out of this window and I saw all this beautiful green. There was a tree down there. There was a fence covered up with kudzu. It's kind of ivy we have back in Georgia. There was a grass down there. And I in that moment, only 5 years old, I saw that there was something in that. Then the life that was in that green stuff was the same as the life that was inside of me. And I realized I was alive. And 5-year-olds don't really know that they're alive. If you think about it, you just go around playing and you're doing stuff and you don't really have a lot of self-awareness. So that's the moment I realized that I was alive and that I had nearly died. And being 5, I really had no context for that experience at all. My parents were not chiropractors or healers of any kind. And I was surrounded by the doctors who told me I was going to die and didn't know what was wrong with me. So I became insanely curious. And my father had taught me to read. I was a precocious reader, so I could read at 5. And he told me if I don't know what something means, to look it up in the dictionary. A copy of Webster's Encyclopedic Dictionary. So it was like a dictionary, but it also had like little mini encyclopedia blurbs on everything. So I just started reading it at 5 because I wanted to figure out what had happened. And I developed an intense interest in biology, what made living things tick, what made people sick, what made them well. And I graduated eventually from the dictionary to the encyclopedia. When I was 6, we got our first computer, and it had an electronic Encyclopedia Britannica. And then eventually we got the internet, and so the world was my oyster, right? But I basically became a student of life from the time I was 5, and that study lasted about 20 years, 2 decades. And at that time, I was 25, and I was in the middle of chiropractic school. That 20 years of study took me through many fields, but they all related to something that had to do with the expression of life. I spent 15 years in martial arts. I was a master martial artist, and I taught for 13 years. My old master was a bone setter from Hong Kong. When I was a teenager, he told me, go to chiropractic school, learn how to set bones, and then I'll teach you the energy and the herbs and the whole deal. So that's what got chiropractic in my mind to begin with. But I spent 6 years as a nutritional consultant. I was a neuromuscular therapist for 5 years. I did all sorts of energy work. I have 2 degrees in coaching. I had a very diverse background, diverse in a certain way, but all within the healing realm, especially holistic and kind of energetic healing. And then I was working as a neuromuscular therapist. My specialty was neck, whiplash type of injuries, and jaw. And I was working on people's necks, and I realized that, gosh, this person, they need an adjustment, and I don't have the skills to do it. So I decided to add another tool to my belt and go to chiropractic school. And it wasn't until halfway through chiropractic school that I was sitting in an assembly. I went to Life University, and we had assemblies then. I don't know if they still do. Not because of nobody's on campus now. But the talk was given by a man named Dr. Arnaud Bernier. Arno Bernier has since become my great friend and a mentor. I worked for him for 3 years, teaching MLS seminars. But Arno was on the stage, and he said, he told the story of the first time that he went to a chiropractor. And he'd been in a motorcycle accident, and he went to this chiropractor named Jean Belleval. And Jean was like a real deal straight chiropractor at the time. And he listened to Arno tell the story. Doc, I hurt my back. This is what's wrong with me. These are my symptoms. And he just patiently listened until there was nothing else to say. And then he said, Arno, there's nothing I can do about what's wrong with you. I can only address what is right in you. You can't fight darkness. You can only turn on light. You can't fight sickness, symptom, and disease. You can only turn on life. And Arno told that story from the stage, and I realized, bam, I'd spent most of my search looking how to fight sickness, symptom, and disease. But the answer to the question I had when I was 5, it kind of culminated in Arno's story there. It was, it's my job to turn on life, not to help people feel better, but to help them heal better. And so from that moment forward, I completely dedicated myself to the study of principal chiropractic. Before it was a tool for my toolkit, and now it's my dedicated career.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's how I became a chiropractor and what led up to it. Now I have a practice in Boulder. I'm about half people and half animals. I'm an animal chiropractor.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And can you describe what it's like to work with humans and animals within the same week? Each day.
Yeah.
Specifically for one population, or do you mix it?
I mix it. So I spend 2.5 days in the office, and 2.5 days I'm out of the office because I travel to horses. About 40% of my practice is equine. And so in my office days, I see people and dogs and cats. And then on the off days, I see horses and their people while I'm there. It's a really good mix. I kind of got my training as a pediatric chiropractor. So when I started the practice, I thought that's what I'd be doing. But it evolved, and life showed me another way. And I became an animal chiropractor. But working with animals is a lot like working with kids if you work with kids, because they can't tell you what's wrong, which is a good thing, because a person will often tell you the wrong thing. And they also can't lie to you. And the results are immediate. When you adjust an animal, or a baby for that matter, but I go out to a barn and I adjust a horse, and you get up, you dance with the horse a little bit. They're kind of unsure of what you're doing. They're like, who's this guy poking around? It kind of hurts. That's where I'm sore. Leave me alone. Or, and you find a subluxation and you get up there and you set it and you watch the horse just go, oh God, thank you. And it's in the face. It's immediate. They start to lick and chew, which is a parasympathetic response, and they'll breathe. And it's like, man, that's so gratifying. People, we have all the mental stuff that's in the way. You adjust a person and they're like, oh, well, maybe did it work? I don't know. Maybe it feels better, but I also did yoga yesterday, and I think that makes it feel better. And, it's like we tell these stories that animals just don't have. Their brains are clean. So when you clear them out, they stay clear. I need to adjust animals far less often than I need to adjust people.
So much in what you just said right there.
Mm-hmm.
So teaching on MLS staff, I also was a facilitator or a support staff to Arno for a couple of years. And I'm curious if you could elaborate a little bit on MLS and just the art form and the principles of MLS, and just kind of describe for a student how that.
For the student, yeah. MLS is the foundation of my adjusting. It's really how I practice, and it was a technique or approach to technique that was taught to me by Arno Bernier. MLS stands for making love to the spine, as you know. But what it means is that back in the 80s, when Arno graduated school, he noticed that people were doing the rack 'em and crack 'em type of chiropractic, where they were just taking the joint to tension, and then you hit like a truck, and bam, and you get a bunch of noise. But it hurts. It's not comfortable. The people were tolerating it, not enjoying it. And he says, man, you're really violating people's spines when you adjust that way. He says, we can't be violating people. You can't, and he was using inflammatory language on purpose. You can't rape somebody's spine. it's an intimate experience, and they're opening themselves up and making themselves available to you. You have to make love to the spine. So it's an approach to adjusting that is based on listening to the body and listening for specifically the yes of the body for consent. And it's about blending with the other person so that you cooperate when you make the adjustment. You do the adjustment with the person and not to the person, not on the person. Now, if you want to learn how to adjust by hand in a very clean, comfortable, and effective way, that's what MLS seminars teach. So they teach you how to train to adjust by hand. There are a lot of instrument techniques and so on and a bunch of other ways, but the seminar teaches you how to adjust every segment in the spine in every direction of its subluxation. However the person presents, you can adjust it. So if you're interested in having a high level of hands-on skill, that's a seminar to start with, I think. I spent 3 years teaching for Arno, and I traveled to LA and Atlanta and Barcelona, and I only stopped teaching for him when I got too busy. But it's definitely the way to go if you want to be a good chiropractor.
Most definitely. I can second that. And there's other interviews on here with other MLS facilitators and Arno himself, if you want to check out
great.
that interview.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Can you elaborate on your training and how you work with horses and animals, and maybe some resources if people are interested to explore that for themselves?
Yeah. So my horse training came from Dr. Jay Comerick. Now, Dr. Jay, he's relatively famous. There's a movie about him. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Life Adjusted, if you want to watch it. But he's the horse guy. He's the one who put horse chiropractic on the map. People know about horse chiropractic because of him. In a stroke of good luck, he came to work for me in my office in Boulder. He worked with me first, and then I purchased his practice when he decided to retire. He came to share space with me because he needed an office, and my office was in downtown Boulder, so it worked out. But as a result of all that, I apprenticed with him directly for 2 years. And I followed him on horse call after horse call after horse call. And I learned all the hands-on skills directly from the master. And then I got my official training, because you have to have certification also, from Parker University, which was I think it was about, took me 6 months or 8 months or something, travel back and forth and do that. So that I could be legally licensed in Colorado. But I got my actual training from Jay. And Jay still teaches seminars. He's retired from practice now. He practices 1 day a week in Mancos, Colorado, a little tiny town in southwest Colorado. But he's retired other than that. And we teach seminars. I think this year there are 2 introductory seminars which are open to students. I think one is going to be in Atlanta, one's going to be in Oakland, or in the Bay Area. And then we teach a series of advanced equine adjusting seminars. And those are for people who have already got their chiropractic license, have already been through the advanced animal training through one of the legally certifying programs, and then they want to learn how we do it. So it's for people who are already certified to practice on animals. That's the advanced seminars. We do those 4 or 5 times a year.
What are some of the basics of how you would work with an animal? What are you checking for? What are the parameters? What are some of the subtleties about how chiropractors specifically work with animals?
A vertebrate is a vertebrate. So human spine is not that different from a dog spine or a cow spine or a horse spine. The anatomy is a little different. As far as the shapes, you have to learn that the line of drives are a little different. So there's some adjustment in technique, but the principles are exactly the same. Principles being, this is a creature with a spine and a nervous system. If the spine is in some way out of whack and impinging on the function of the nervous system, the creature cannot express life fully. So we want to remove the subluxation, open up the spine, allow the creature to express life more fully. And then it doesn't really matter whether you walk on 2 legs or 4 legs or no legs, I guess. I mean, I've heard of people adjusting a dolphin before. But the hardest part of working with an animal chiropractically is just working with an animal generally. A lot of people don't know how to approach a horse. A lot of people don't know how to not get bitten by a dog. Some people are afraid of animals. They're afraid they'll get trampled or get bitten, or, so that's the biggest obstacle, is teaching yourself to be an animal person. Now, I grew up on a farm. I probably owned 30 dogs in my lifetime. So animals were natural to me. Some of the students that we have, it's a lot less natural. We kind of have to coach them on how to be around an animal. But animals are just like working with kids. Just take a nonverbal kid, make it 1,200 pounds, and you've got yourself a horse. So they can feel what you're up to. They're incredibly intelligent, but they have an emotional intelligence that exceeds ours. So if you connect with them on an emotional level and you show them that you're trustworthy, then you watch a horse. If you go back and look at Jay's movie, the horse will kind of watch you and figure out, is this something that I want to tolerate, or is this something that I want to kick this guy and say to hell with it? And people are always amazed. They say, wow, I can't believe the horse is letting you do that. I say, well, you get adjusted, right? You know what it feels like. The horse feels the same thing. So, once you show them what you're up to, they're almost always right on board. It's the beginning part, the introduction, that they're not really sure about. But if you're confident in your skill, you know that you're there to help the animal can sense that. You know how to be safe around an animal, so you're not afraid. The animal can sense that too. If you're nervous, they're nervous. If you're nervous, horses are herd animals. So if you're nervous, they think that you feel like you're in danger. And since they're part of the herd, they feel like they should feel like they're in danger too. You're nervous. That must mean that you see a lion somewhere. That means I need to be afraid of a lion too, right? So if you approach a horse and you're nervous about the horse gets nervous about you, back and forth. It's a vicious cycle. So a lot of what we teach is how to be safe so that you have confidence, because you approach the horse with confidence, and of course you don't be stupid.
That's really cool explanation, just for anyone who's just hearing about adjusting animals for the first time. Can you describe what it's like to adjust a pediatric? You said that you had some training in that as well.
Yeah, because Arno was a pediatric chiropractor, and Arno taught me that the natural clientele for a chiropractic office is moms and kids. And the reason is because somebody like you or me, we're a certain part of the way through our lives. If I started getting chiropractic today, it would help me, but kind of all of the potential that I lost before now is gone. But if you start somebody when they're just born, if they get a subluxation and then you correct it the next week, every time that happens throughout their life, you've saved them a bit of their potential for when they grow up. They retain a lot more of their potential. That's what a subluxation does, is it reduces your potential to express life. And if that goes on for years and years and years and years, you've lost a lot of your life, a lot of your potential. So we start kids from the time that they're born. They retain a lot more of that potential than somebody who starts later in life. Now, it's never too late to start. But the ideal client would be somebody who starts right in the beginning, so that they never go. What would it be like if you never went a whole week in your life? You never went more than a week with a subluxation, right? If you got checked in a week, every week forever, and never more than a few days subluxated. Most of us spent years subluxated before the first time we were adjusted. Who knows what the ramifications of that were. So that's what Arno taught me, working with moms and kids. It didn't really pan out for me. I still work with some. I still do some pediatrics, but I'm mainly a general practice, not necessarily a pediatric specific practice. I'm single, never married, not much of a family to speak of. I wasn't meeting the right people. I wasn't at T-ball practice with other parents and so on. And so when I started my practice, I had the intention of having a pediatric practice, moms and kids, but it just didn't develop that way. And there are obvious reasons why. And then later on in my practice, I got called more towards animals anyhow. And that worked out great.
Can you speak about the creative expression of practice and how you just described you organically gravitated towards what was there and not necessarily seeking something because that's what you were supposed to do?
Yeah. That was a hard lesson for me, to surrender. I lived my life based on the principle of surrender. And that means when life butts up against your preferences, you say yes to life instead of trying to hold on to your preferences. And that's not a philosophy that works for everybody. I understand it takes a great deal of I don't know what you would call it, maybe not courage, but I know that my life doesn't work well when I resist. When I resist the flow of life, I wind up getting overwhelmed by it. When I surrender to the flow of life, everything in my life works better. Now that's for me. It's not to say that's for everyone.
I think that there's a lot there for anyone going into
Yeah.
chiropractic school. There's a lot of surrendering you need to do. The curriculum and the program might be a completely different message and experience
Right.
than what you're describing here, and the messaging that you're providing. It really is that parallel, that supplemental program that
Sure.
Arno has really pioneered, I want to say. But what would you, just off the top of your head, describe to a prospective student or a new incoming chiropractic student that how should they set up their training regimen, or how should they begin to organize the way that they approach their studies today?
Yeah, I couldn't really say. And the reason is exactly what I said. It's surrender. Nothing that I planned worked out the way I planned it. My life worked out way better than I could have planned it. Now that's an important lesson for me, because the manifestor types will have you talking about write down your dream practice and make it exactly the way you want it to be. Well, my practice is better than the way I thought I wanted it to be, right? My imagination was not big enough for what life had in store for me. So that's an important thing. Now, as far as being in chiropractic school, like you said, it's a challenging environment because you get so many mixed messages. You know, I'm here talking about subluxation and the expression of life, and you adjust people to turn the lights on, and you can't fight darkness, you have to turn on the light. And then you spend 4 years in school learning about venereal diseases and things you're not supposed to say, and wearing white lab coats or something. And it's not the same thing. It really isn't. You don't learn real chiropractic in chiropractic school. You learn how. No, you don't learn how. You go through the training that is necessary. It's a trial by fire, so to speak, if you want to talk about it in mythological language, right? We go through a 4-year initiation, which breaks us. It'll break you and change everything that you thought that you knew. And it's a test of, it's not necessarily a test of strength, it's a test of how truthful you can be to yourself. You have a little truthometer inside of you. It's always ticking back and forth, right? And somebody says something to you and you're like, that's not right. That doesn't feel right to me. But they say it enough times over 4 years, you start to believe it. So how true can you be to yourself throughout that training? Do you have a North Star? I mean, that's why I wear the North Star, right? Do you have a compass that points you in the direction that aligns with your heart, so that when everything else is trying to pull you off course, you know which way you're going? And for me, that was really Arno's talk, because the first 2 years in chiropractic school, I was more or less a mixer, and I was a neuromuscular therapist who wanted an additional tool, and I was just doing everything. But then when I heard that this is what chiropractic is, I really understood it. I knew from that point on, I can't deviate. And so I took everything they taught me in school with a grain of salt. I learned it because you're supposed to learn it to pass the exam. You can't get a license if you don't pass the exam. So you do it. That's your trial by fire, right? That's your initiation. It's every culture has an initiation, and it's never comfortable. You have to walk over hot coals or something, or who cares what it is, right? You take mushrooms and you starve in the wilderness for a week, or everybody has that kind of initiation. And in chiropractic school, it's the didactic learning. How much of yourself can you retain through that 4 years of systematic tearing down of your psyche? And so I would say, if you're having listened to this podcast and going into chiropractic school, I would say do everything that you can to surround yourself with the reason you are there. And a lot of people don't know why they're there when they start. So I know that it might not land for very many people, but give yourself something on the mirror every morning that reminds you. Can't fight darkness, you have to turn on the light. You can't fight sickness, symptom, and disease, you're here to turn on life. And in whichever way that you have to remotivate yourself every day to stay on the path. The other thing is you mentioned the parallel curriculum. Going through chiropractic school, it's incredibly important to participate in 2 curriculums. The first curriculum is what they're teaching you in school. You have to do it, otherwise you can't get a license. It takes 4 years, nobody gets past it. You just have to do it. The second curriculum is how to learn to actually be a chiropractor, how to learn the principles upon which chiropractic is based, how to learn the proper adjusting techniques that lead to a clean, comfortable, and honoring adjustment, how to learn to communicate chiropractic to other people, and how to learn to be a good person without losing yourself to the mindless drone of schoolwork. And all of that is the parallel curriculum. So you have twice as much work to do. You got to do your schoolwork, and then you got to become a chiropractor. Mm-hmm. And that's the parallel curriculum. Life University was very good about that because being the biggest school, it attracted all of the seminars and all of the speakers. I think Life West is similar, but you can do it anywhere.
Can you get into the mindset or the intention that you have when you work with people as a chiropractor, and just kind of how you work with people on the table, some of the different parts of the adjustment?
The intention that I set before I adjust anybody, it's a nonverbal protocol at this point, but if I was to do it in words, it would be something like, before I ever put my hands on the person, I will receive only healing and beneficial energy from this person, and I will transmit only healing and beneficial energy from that person. It's really important to come at them with a clean intention where you don't want anything from them during that interaction, right? I am only here to serve this person's body in whatever way it asks me to from a chiropractic standpoint. Yeah. And then with that intention, when I put my hand on the body and I scan the spine, what I'm doing, I taught a seminar once called Chiropractic Wizardry, where I taught the skill of listening. In martial arts, there's a skill called listening, where you put your hands on the hand of another person and you try to feel their movement through your hands. Yeah? Listening jing, they call it. So I taught the skill of listening to the spine, and as you palpate the spine, where is it calling to you? Where do you feel the calling? And then, so that's where I start. Where's the body saying, yeah, right here? And then when I start to palpate, I feel a little bit left, a little bit right, a little bit deeper, a little bit more shallow. And I start to get all of the yeses. Where when I press in, do I feel the body going, yeah, that's right, right there, you know? And that's how I adjust my vector before I deliver a force. And those are principles taught to me by Arno about how to honor the body with an adjustment. It's different from me deciding where the vertebra needs to go and pushing it where I want it to go. Instead, it's a constant process of communication with the body. Okay, body, I found what you're asking me to find. Help me figure out how to do this with you, right? And that's when I make an adjustment. When you make an adjustment, it's got to be fast, clean, and no hesitation. And then it goes right through the joint, boom, and that's a clean adjustment. And I do that with every adjustment, thoracic, lumbar, cervical adjustment, whatever. And my intention is simply to find it, clear it out, and then let the person integrate that. You know, my intention is not to fix them. I don't see them as broken. It's not to heal them because I don't see them as sick. This person on the table is whole, healed, and complete before they ever knew me. Right? My job is just to help them realize that. So that's what the adjustment does. It brings them a little closer to that integration with self. So I make the adjustment, boom, spine opens up. I let them rest on the table and work on the next person.
That's really a beautiful intro to chiropractic. I appreciate you sharing and being concise with your message. And any prospective students out there, if you're interested in connecting with Dr. Ryan, he's available. I'm sure he's happy to share I've seen some of your videos adjusting horses, adjusting somebody. Can you just speak about, posted a video recently where you were working with somebody who'd been in your practice for 2 years, getting adjusted. And what do you think about pre-chiro students and getting chiropractic care? How long would you recommend they work with somebody to really get deep enough to realize that this might be something that they could see themselves doing for the rest of their life?
I started chiropractic school. I'd only been adjusted a few times, a handful of times. symptomatically here and there. I got my first adjustment when I was 19, I think, and so I didn't have a good grounding in chiropractic when I went to chiropractic school. I was fortunate that I stumbled upon Arno and learned the story. But I think if you're considering going into chiropractic school, or you have a kind of a pre-chiropractic trajectory, get under chiropractic care, consistent chiropractic care as soon as possible. And ask your chiropractor to talk to you when you go in, and find out if what they're saying is the same thing that I'm saying. If they're saying something different, you need to evaluate that and figure out which parts do I resonate with and which parts don't I resonate with, and find out what their struggles were and what their successes were. And most importantly, when you pay attention to how the adjustment settles in your own body, look for the openness instead of looking for the resolution of symptoms. Because when you start to find that openness, it's a little more open every time you get adjusted, that's really the thing that you're providing for other people. And once you've figured out what that is that what you want to do for the rest of your life? One thing that chiropractors, I think, don't understand is that chiropractic is very simple. It's too simple for a lot of people. It's not exciting enough for a lot of people. Because all I do all day long is provide a little bit more openness to a bunch of people every day. It's not like I'm a cardiothoracic surgeon in an 18-hour surgery and save somebody's life and it's dramatic. We don't have drama in our profession, in our offices. You see miracles every day. But what I do, it doesn't cause the miracle. What I do is very subtle and very simple. I do one thing, and so I do what's called an adjustment. I introduce a force into the body that produces a little bit more openness in the system so the person can live a little better. And that's too simple for some folks. So when you get under chiropractic care, find that feeling that I'm talking about. Figure out, can you be satisfied just doing that for the rest of your life? And if you can't, then it's not the job for you. Still great, stay under chiropractic care, but then you'll know.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ryan. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks for having me on.